Well, folks, we made it. This is the final day of 2022, which just so happens to be the last Saturday of 2022. Good morning and happy Saturday, everyone. I'm sure a lot of people are pretty ready for this year to be over. I will admit I am one of them too. In fact, I guarantee you going into today, my low is definitely the fact that, I clearly wish that this year would have been better than I was hoping for in the beginning of this year. And I actually had talked this over with my therapist a few days ago, on my birthday actually. And I had come to the realization that I let my heartbreak legitimately take over how I felt. And that ain't a good thing. I was never in the proper mindset. I never experienced anything like that before, and therefore I wasn't in the proper mindset to be able to handle it. However, I do know that over time, I'll get better. In some ways, I actually already am better. And it's not just the heartbreak was the only bad thing. There were other bad things that happened too. I mean, my Cowboys lost to the 49ers in the playoffs last year. That's another thing that happened. The Bills didn't make it to the Super Bowl last year. That's why I picked them to win it this year. And yeah, a few fights with, or arguments with my parents and stuff. That wasn't any good. But I refuse to say that 2022 was a bad year. I just can't in good conscience do that. I will admit, there was a time I was thinking like 2022 for me was like what 2020 was for a lot of other people. Okay? That's how bad 2022 was looking for me. But again, I'm not gonna let that happen. I refuse to say that this was an entirely bad year. Especially when, hurting my ribs aside, these last few days have been great. I legit could say that I said before, if 2022 ended on my birthday, I would have said it was a good year. And then the whole hurting my ribs thing happened, and then it kind of complicated things a little bit. But nothing bad happened yesterday. And unless someone immediately close to me happens to pass on, I don't think anything's going to happen within the next 18 hours and 44 minutes. So, I'm still going to say this is a good year. So, in honor of making sure it stays that way, I'm going to go over all of the best things that happened that I know of this year. Some of them are personal. Some of them are probably meant for a bunch of other people. But I think I should start with the most obvious and arguably the most recent, which is when I did those Why I'm Still Here videos. Now, listen, it's no secret. At this point, it really is no secret that at one point I did contemplate suicide because of a certain misdiagnosis that happened many years ago. And yes, some of which I did bring upon myself. There are some situations I could have handled better. There's a few things I could have spoken up more. But I have to live with that. And while I have to live with the rest of my life knowing that I contemplated suicide once, I at least get to talk about it. Let me rephrase that. I get to talk about it. Trust me when I say that every day, good or bad, it really has been a gift. And I will admit sometimes I don't see that. But this is one of those days I'm definitely going to make sure I look at it as such. And no, I don't have to do it every year. But you know what? It's like that one episode of South Park that ended with Stan saying, "Dad, does this mean we have to go to church?" And then Randy's like, "No, son, it means we get to." Same mentality right there. Okay, let's do something a bit farther back. You know what? Pretty much every birthday and holiday that we celebrate as a family, they were all great. You know, at the very end of the day, listen, in a perfect world, everyone I know and love would be, with me during times of like birthdays and holidays and such. And in some cases, that did happen to be true. But that really was more for family than, friends. Listen, if it were up to me, I'd be seeing my friends every day. But, we all have busy lives. It's only by the grace of God I'm able to pull off something every once in a while, to even go over to somewhere like peas and macarons, for instance. I just kind of got lucky that my schedule allowed it. But that's definitely something I'm doing next year. I'm definitely going to try and be there more for all my friends. And be out. Like, I went out more this year than in previous years. I definitely want to do that more, for sure. And, opportunities like birthdays and holidays kind of, can be conducive to that sort of thing. Just being with people, being surrounded with people. And at the end of the day, even if it winds up not happening, I still have my family. I got a mom and dad and a brother and sister-in-law and nephews and grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins who all love me very much. Worst case scenario, something bad happens to me, they'd be there. I'm sure they would. Actually, you know what? Speaking of, let's get a little less emotional, shall we? Let's talk about a few things that I personally was glad I personally saw the endings of. How about shows like Kid Cosmic, Part 2 of Inside Job? Actually, Part 1 and Part 2 of Inside Job. All of the Cuphead show. Klaus. I saw a lot of really great stuff this year. I really did. And yeah, some things I probably could have seen sooner. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I got to talk about it and share with you guys. And other stuff like, America's Got Talent and, The Masked Singer. Obviously, those shows are great. Which reminds me, I am really excited for America's Got Talent All-Stars. Ooh, I can't wait to talk about that. It's gonna be so exciting. Okay. What else? You know what? If I am going to talk about two things specifically ending, first, let me talk about my all-time favorite show, Amphibia. Because this year, it ended. And for those of you who don't know the story, back in 2000, I think it was 2009 when Gravity Falls first aired, I didn't really give it a chance, but then everyone thought it was great. And then I finally saw it, I'm like, man, I missed out. I wouldn't make that mistake again. Then Amphibia comes along, and I'm glad I didn't make that mistake again. Because now it's my all-time favorite show. By the way, as an Amphibia fan, of course, I know what happens at the end of Marcy's journal. And what do I think of Marcy's journal, and specifically the final page? Listen, at the end of the day, whether the story of Amphibia and the three Calamity Girls and Sasha and Marcy continues is based entirely on what Matt Brawley wants to do. I mean, for all disclosure, he couldn't have ended Amphibia right after, The Hardest Thing, which was the final episode, and the series finale that aired earlier this year. And I said it was one of the greatest finales to a show I'd ever seen in my life. And come to think of it, literally all 3 season finales of Amphibia, under different circumstances, each one could be its own series finale, and if it ended there, I would have said it was great. But, you had Reunion, True Colors, and The Hardest Thing. 3 of the greatest season finales in my all-time favorite show, ever. I have no complaints. And if Matt Brawley chooses to end the story of Amphibia right there, I'm okay with it. But I will, let's point the elephant in the room. Matt Brawley has, in fact, talked about how maybe he'd want to do a movie, whether it involves time travel or time skip, who knows. But at the end of the day, the show should continue based on what Matt Brawley wants to do, and no one else. I have much respect for the creator, so if Matt Brawley wants to make a movie, he's got my blessing on it. My blessing actually matters. But I dare not argue. I dare not argue with what he says. How about that? Although I will admit I've probably seen The Hardest Thing maybe a dozen times since it aired. It still gets me every time. Speaking of endings, I can't talk about 2022 without the ending of the Wano arc in One Piece. Holy cow. Never before. Let me tell you something. Pre-Wano, pre-June of 2018, a part of me never thought we'd ever get to Wano. And then Wano begins. And yeah, I was going through some tough times myself. Specifically, seriously, shortly after Wano started, that's when I had to go to Denver for weight-related issues. That was hard, but Wano helped me get through it. And, 1, 2, 3 years go by, and we're still in Wano. At that point, I'm thinking, okay, and here's the thing, it's not like I want the Wano arc to end, but I'm like, this is going on for quite a while. And let's be honest, the pandemic did not help things at all. In fact, full disclosure, the Wano arc we easily could have gotten to chapter 1000 much sooner, were it not for the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, we had literally a chapter every 2 weeks. At least now, we're kind of on a more regular schedule, where we get a few chapters in back-to-back weeks, and then, then there's a break or a hiatus, which is fine. But, imagine pretty much a 2-week break after every chapter. Yeah, that was 2020. Not good. And yeah, I think I'm going to talk about the one thing everyone has been talking about regarding the ending of Wano. Specifically the final fight between Luffy and Kaido. Luffy using Gear 5th is easily the greatest transformation I think I've ever seen in any sort of fiction. And for that analysis, I had to look to what Totally Not Mark once said regarding when it happened. Because any Dragon Ball fans will tell you that when Goku transformed into a Super Saiyan against Frieza, after Frieza killed Krillin and Goku is emotional, physical breaking point, out of sheer anger and rage, Goku, he became the Super Saiyan. He became the warrior that Frieza had heard of in legend, pure of heart and awakened by fury. That's the Super Saiyan right there. And he did it out of anger. And for a long time, a lot of shows, even shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, sort of follow that trope where a major power-up occurs and it's out of anger. With Luffy using Gear 5th, this was out of sheer imagination. I had never seen anything like it. And it only just got better from there. So, yeah. You know, a while back I made a video asking the question, was, is, and will Wano be known as the greatest manga arc of all time? And I'll tell you what, if something ever does come along that's greater, I'll be dead long before that happens. I'm being dead serious. As of right now, I can tell you without question that Wano is the greatest manga arc of all time. In any shonen manga, or any manga in general. And I can only imagine. I mean, we're in the final saga of One Piece. 2022 had the final saga of One Piece beginning. You can't tell me that, like, One Piece is nearing the end game, man. I never thought that would happen. Which, all the credit in the world to Ichiro Oda for writing the greatest story ever. But we're here. One Piece is slowly but surely reaching its endgame. And listen, I know I just said Wano is the greatest manga arc of all time. Listen, there's still the final battle of One Piece that has to take place. Without question, it's going to be the greatest, largest battle probably in all of fiction. Although I will admit, right now I would say Ragnarok from God of War Ragnarok probably has the edge so far. Because, seriously, have any of you seen God of War Ragnarok? Bruh. What can I say? I love Kratos. For those of you who don't know, I haven't played God of War Ragnarok yet, but I did play the original trilogy. And I never really could get into the gameplay style of God of War, 4. So, take that what you will. But I've always loved Kratos. I've always loved the story. And, yeah. There's a reason why there's this one video on YouTube saying that Ragnarok is the greatest battle in all of fiction, or in all of video games. I buy that. Sure. I totally buy that. Although I will admit, the final battle of One Piece is going to top that. I guarantee it is. Actually, speaking of manga in general, Hunter x Hunter came back. Here's the thing, I really don't have any intention of watching the anime, but I'll just read the manga, I guess. Why not? I mean, thanks to Liam of the Grand Line Review, and New World Review, and Dude in the Room, he's got me invested. What can I say? He got me. Okay, that's enough nerd stuff for me. Oh yeah, Wendo and Wild. I saw Wendo and Wild. That was really good. Okay. One last sort of nerd-related thing. That entire time I was up at Cuca Lake for the week, and I binge-watched all of Virgin River. Yeah. Virgin River's a pretty good show. It is. I even turned my folk side into it, too. For those of you who don't know, for those of you who are wondering, my favorite character is Doc. Because, as my dad pointed out, he's Otter from Animal House. So there we go. Okay, now we can get into the big things I really wanted to go over. Starting with what really turned this whole year around for me. And that was the 2 weddings I went to. My old neighborhood friend back in September, and my cousin in November, when we had to fly down to Houston. Listen, it's no secret that, I just said this the other day, my luck with the ladies hasn't really been so great. And for a long time, I really would always go to weddings just feeling so depressed and thinking, I'm never going to find the right woman. And that's sure, and pardon the language, it's sure as shit not going to be me standing up there. And maybe it was because back in August of 2021, when it was where I was properly diagnosed with pragmatic communication disorder and depression, and therefore not on the spectrum anymore, that I got a new lease on life. But those two weddings I went to were, and don't get me wrong, the first one I went to had friends I hadn't seen in over a decade. Just being, already that makes, and then with my cousin's wedding, there's the fact that, I see these family members maybe once a year. Twice if I'm lucky. And I'm talking really lucky. So, the fact that at both weddings I've seen people that I rarely ever get to see, that already put them over the top in my book. But what ultimately made these weddings so much better, by comparison to any wedding I'd been to previously, and this is going to sound really cheesy, but it's because I cried. Just being surrounded by friends in the September wedding, or family in my cousin's wedding in November, I just felt so much love, warmth, and with the September ones, because it actually was warm. Actually, Houston was pretty warm too. My point is, love, warmth, joy, they're the two most beautiful weddings I think I've ever seen. I may have mentioned this before, but I was completely and utterly miserable at my brother's wedding. I will say, though, the union between my brother and his wife was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Imagine that, but all throughout. And those were the two weddings I was just at. So, believe me, I had every right to cry. And I don't feel any shame for it. Because it was beautiful. Both of those weddings were beautiful. So, to my old friend who got married last September, and to my cousin who got married in November, congratulations. I hope both of your weddings were everything you dreamed of, and may you and your spouses have the time of your lives for the rest of your lives. In that regard, I'd say 2022 was a pretty good year. But you're probably wondering, well, Nick, that just happened at the end. Was there anything that happened in that first, 2/3 to 3/4 of that year that you could look back on and say that was pretty darn great? As a matter of fact, there is. And I can't believe, you would think that as great as time as I had at both of those weddings, they were the best things that happened to me this year. You can make an argument that, I can make an argument that they are, but there is one thing that needs to be talked about. And I guess it kind of does go back to the idea that I always had that, that's never going to be me standing on the altar with the love of my life, whoever she may be. Much less, being able to start a family. And for many years, I never thought I was ever going to have a family, much less, little kids running around. And then came November 7th, 2019, and then August 23rd, 2021. And I was blessed with 3 nephews, a pair of twins, and one who's now 16 months old. I think he actually might be 17 months old now I think about it. Oh, September, October. Yeah, it's 16, never mind. And back in April, my brother and my sister-in-law decided to get my 3 nephews baptized. And my brother asked me to be a godfather to one of them. I was touched. You know, that's literally one of the greatest honors I think I've ever been bestowed. Like, for those that, well, in case anyone's wondering, it's the youngest too. I'm the godfather too. You know, I got to be there for him with his godmother, who is my brother's sister-in-law's sister. I think that's how it works. She's actually over playing basketball in Ireland right now. She's gonna be a really good WNBA player, let me tell you what right now. So yeah. Just being that little guy's godfather. And not just that, but being an uncle to my nephews as a whole. And which reminds me, yesterday, for whatever reason, I was watching the end of the Kids Next Door movie, Operation Zero, which is one of the greatest Cartoon Network original movies of all time, by the way. And I was watching that one scene where number 1 is looking at the projection of number 0, talking about, "Hello, son. If you're watching this, then we've won. I bet you want, number 0, his father, because number 1's father is number 0. How cool is that, right?" And then number 0 says, "Look, of course I would love to spend time with and have great adventures with number 1, but the thing is, I'm just not a kid anymore. I'm an adult. And I have the most important mission of my life in front of me, being a good father to my son." That's me being an uncle in a nutshell. I may not know the full answers to why I'm still here. After, 14 years and 1 fortnight and 3 days. But I do know this. Those boys are definitely part of that answer. So, no matter what, I'm going to be there for him. I'm going to be a good uncle to my nephews. And you could probably say that, I could say that's my New Year's resolution, but I was going to do that anyway. I'll talk about my New Year's resolutions tomorrow. But no matter what, I'm going to be a good godfather to my godson, and I'm going to be a good uncle to my nephews. Enough said. I will admit, sometimes if I ever feel lost, and I try listening for any kind of familiar voice to help me through something. Listen, those kids may not be able to talk much yet, but I tell you what, I recognize their voices anywhere. And believe me, hearing them speak, It's one of the most beautiful things in the world. And I get to say that I'm their uncle. Man. I guess it's up to me to find that analogy, huh? I was actually watching Chelsea Handler's stand-up special Revolution that just aired on Netflix. And it ended with saying, I still believe in love. There really is someone out there for everyone. So, as long as I believe that, I at least got that going for me, right? So you know what? This wasn't that bad of a year at all. It just wasn't what I wanted. But that's okay. Because I can make an argument I got a few things that are better. And I'm okay with that. So, if you've been with me for now 5 years, actually what, 18, 19, 20, 21, yeah, 5 years. I hope you enjoyed these last 5 years with many, many, many more to come. I am very humbled that I made 5 years worth of videos. I made it all the way here. I'm humbled I'll be making videos for the rest of my life. I'm humbled I'm able to do that and share everything I can with you all. I am beyond hopeful that your new year is the happiest it could possibly be. And remember, if any of you want to talk or chat, I will always be here to lend an ear, and I'll always have your back. So, take care, Happy New Year, and let's be honest, it's New Year's. There'll be a lot of drinking tonight, so make good choices. And I'll see you all in 2023. Now it's 18 hours and 14 minutes from now. I talked for a long time. What can I say? 2022 gave me a lot to talk about. And I'm sure 2023 will give me even more to talk about. Have a nice day, everyone, and Happy New Year.